I'm grateful you joined tonight. Your brain has already begun shifting into a quieter state, just by lying here in the dark, preparing to dream. Tonight, you'll discover how scientists have learned to communicate with dreamers mid-dream, and understand why lucid dreaming may be one of the most fascinating windows into human consciousness. Welcome to Sleep Science Documentary. Wherever you are right now, perhaps your eyes already heavy, your room growing softer around you, allow yourself to rest into this exploration. We'll journey through 100 dream science facts about lucid dreaming. From the earliest brain recordings of sleeping minds to the signals dreamers send from inside their dreams, to the quiet border between waking thought and infinite inner worlds. These calm explorations of dream science build a sanctuary for restless minds. A gentle like, subscribe, or quiet share creates a pathway for other searching souls to find their way here, one sleepy soul at a time. Your presence in this space means everything to us. Settle completely into wherever you're resting now. Let your jaw unclench, your shoulders release, your breath find its own slow rhythm. You don't need to hold on to any of what you're about to hear. Just let the science drift past you like gentle currents, carrying you towards sleep. There's nothing to do, nothing to remember. Simply listen. Close your eyes and breathe deeply. You're floating where dreams rest safely in gentle darkness. Let your mind merge with infinite peace. And now we begin. Lucid dreaming is the experience of becoming aware that you are dreaming while the dream is still happening. It sounds simple, but that single moment of awareness, the realization that the world around you is entirely generated by your own sleeping brain, is one of the most unusual states of consciousness humans can experience. Scientists have studied it formally since the 1970s, and what they've found suggests that lucid dreaming sits at a precise intersection of sleeping and waking, where two very different modes of consciousness overlap. The dreamer is asleep, yet somehow aware, unconscious, yet thinking. It is one of the quieter mysteries of the human mind. The word lucid simply means clear. A lucid dream is a clear dream, one where the dreamer sees through the usual fog of sleep and recognizes what is happening. This clarity doesn't always mean control. Many lucid dreamers report being aware they are dreaming without being able to change anything about the dream. Awareness and control are separate skills, and researchers now treat them as distinct phenomena worth studying independently. Awareness comes first. Control, for those who develop it, comes much later and with practice. The first scientific evidence that lucid dreaming was real came in 1975, when a British psychologist named Keith Hearn conducted an experiment at Hull University. He asked a practiced lucid dreamer named Alan Worsley to signal from inside a dream using a pre-agreed pattern of eye movements. When Worsley entered a lucid dream and moved his eyes in the agreed sequence, those movements were traced by an electro-oculograph, a device that records the motion of the eyes during sleep. A channel of communication had opened quietly between the waking world and the dreaming one. The signal was there on the paper. The experiment had worked. Hearn's work was published in a parapsychology journal and received limited attention from mainstream science at the time. The discovery is more widely known through the work of Stanford University researcher Stephen LaBerge, who conducted his own independent eye movement signaling experiment in January of 1978 and published the results in Perceptual and Motor Skills in 1980. Leberg used full polysomnography, recording brainwaves, eye movements, and muscle activity simultaneously, which ruled out the possibility of wakefulness and placed the signals unambiguously within REM sleep. He went on to found the Lucidity Institute and spent decades developing techniques to induce and study lucid dreams. His work transformed lucid dreaming from a philosophical curiosity into a subject of serious cognitive neuroscience. Eye movements are possible during lucid dreams because the eyes are not paralyzed during REM sleep the way most voluntary muscles are. The body's motor system shuts down during dreaming sleep to prevent people from physically acting out their dreams. But the eyes remain mobile. This is what gives REM sleep its name: rapid eye movement. Researchers have used this preserved mobility as a communication channel between the dreaming brain and the waking world. A thin wire of contact threading through the otherwise impenetrable curtain of sleep. Lucid dreaming occurs almost exclusively during REM sleep, the stage of sleep characterized by rapid eye movements, vivid dreaming, and near-complete muscle paralysis. REM sleep cycles occur roughly every 90 minutes throughout the night, with the longest and most intense REM periods arriving in the hours just before waking. This means the early morning hours, particularly between 4 and 7 in the morning, are when lucid dreaming is statistically most likely to occur. The brain during late-night REM is in a state that is, in some ways, closer to waking consciousness than to deep sleep. Studies using electroencephalography, which measures electrical activity across the scalp, show that the brain during a lucid dream looks different from both ordinary dreaming and ordinary waking. During a lucid dream, there is a gentle rise in high-frequency gamma waves, particularly in the prefrontal cortex, the region just behind the forehead associated with self-awareness, decision-making, and what researchers call metacognition, or thinking about thinking. The gamma activity during lucid dreaming resembles what is seen during alert, focused waking attention, yet it is occurring inside a sleeping brain. In ordinary dreaming, the prefrontal cortex is relatively quiet. This is one reason normal dreams are so strange. Without the prefrontal cortex's critical oversight, the dreaming brain accepts impossible things without question. You are flying. Your childhood home has a wing you never noticed. Someone is speaking to you in a language you understand perfectly, even though you've never heard it before. None of this triggers alarm because the part of your brain that would notice the inconsistency has stepped back from the conversation. In lucid dreaming, that part wakes back up. Surveys suggest that roughly 55% of people have experienced at least one lucid dream in their lifetime. That is more than half the population. Yet most people report having them rarely, perhaps a handful of times in their entire lives, usually spontaneously and without any deliberate attempt to induce them. A smaller group, estimated at around 20 to 30% of the general population, report having lucid dreams regularly, at least once per month. And a still smaller group, perhaps 1 in 10, report having them frequently enough to develop some degree of skill within them. These numbers are worth pausing on. Lucid dreaming is not as rare as it sounds. More than half of all people who have ever lain down to sleep have, at some point, looked around inside a dream and thought, "This is a dream. That is an extraordinary thing." The brain, entirely on its own, developed a capacity for self-reflection so powerful that it can recognize its own creations mid-process. Whatever lucid dreaming is, it is not a curiosity belonging to a few unusual people. It is something the human mind is quietly capable of, in the right conditions. Researchers divide lucid dreams into two types based on how they begin. Dream-initiated lucid dreams, sometimes abbreviated as DILDS, begin when a person is already in a dream and then suddenly realizes they are dreaming. Something in the dream's logic breaks down enough to trigger recognition. Wake-initiated lucid dreams, abbreviated WILDS, occur when a person transitions directly from waking consciousness into a lucid dream state without losing awareness. WILDS are rarer and often described as more vivid, since the person never fully loses their waking sense of self during the transition. The wake-initiated lucid dream is particularly interesting from a neuroscience perspective because it offers a window into the moment of sleep onset. People who practice WILDS report a sequence of experiences as they transition into the dream. Hypnagogic imagery, the swirling patterns and fragments of faces and sounds that appear as the mind begins to drift, a deepening of that imagery into coherent scenes, and then a sudden sense of entering, as if stepping through a doorway into a fully formed world. The whole process, according to experienced practitioners, takes between 5 and 20 minutes of careful, relaxed attention. Hypnagogia, the transitional state between waking and sleeping, has been studied as a distinct form of consciousness for more than a century. It is characterized by fragmented imagery, unusual sounds, and a loosening of logical thinking that precedes full dream formation. Some of history's most curious thinkers, including Thomas Edison and Salvador Dali, are said by various accounts to have explored hypnagogic states for creative purposes, napping briefly to linger at sleep's edge. Whether these stories are precise history or legend passed down through admiration, the underlying idea that the loosening of waking logic near sleep holds something of value has found support in more systematic research since. Dream journaling is one of the most consistently recommended practices for anyone wishing to have lucid dreams. The practice is straightforward. Keep a notebook by the bed and write down whatever you remember from your dreams as soon as you wake, before the memories fade. Dream memories are fragile. Researchers have found that most dream content is forgotten within 5 to 10 minutes of waking, unless it is deliberately recalled. Regular journaling strengthens dream recall, which in turn increases the likelihood of recognizing dream patterns that can trigger lucidity during the dream itself. The connection between dream recall and lucid dreaming appears to be bidirectional. People who naturally recall their dreams more vividly tend to have more lucid dreams. And people who begin practicing dream journaling often report that their lucid dreaming frequency increases over the following weeks. One proposed explanation is that journaling trains the brain to pay closer attention to dream content, which may prime the prefrontal cortex to remain slightly more active during REM sleep. The brain learns what to look for, and then, quietly, begins to look. One of the most widely studied induction techniques is called reality testing, or reality checking. The practice involves regularly pausing during waking life to ask the question, "Am I dreaming right now?" This question is paired with a physical test, such as trying to push a finger through the palm of the opposite hand, looking at a digital clock or a piece of text and looking away and back again, or checking whether one can breathe while pinching the nose shut. In waking life, none of these tests yield anything strange. In a dream, they often do. Text changes between glances. Fingers pass through palms. Breathing continues despite the pinched nose. The logic behind reality testing is that habitual thoughts in waking life tend to carry over into dreams. If a person asks themselves whether they are dreaming 10 or 20 times per day, the habit eventually follows them into sleep. At some point, the same question arises spontaneously inside a dream, and when the dreamer performs the test and finds that their finger has disappeared into their palm, the dreaming brain receives a quiet and unmistakable signal. This is the moment of lucid awakening within the dream, a technique known as mnemonic induction of lucid dreams, commonly abbreviated MILD, was developed by Stephen LaBerge in the 1980s and remains one of the most studied induction methods. The practitioner sets an intention before sleep to recognize that they are dreaming. They visualize themselves becoming lucid in a dream and repeat a quiet internal phrase such as, "Next time I am dreaming, I will remember that I am dreaming." Studies suggest that MILD, particularly when performed after waking from an early morning dream and then returning to sleep, can increase lucid dream frequency compared to no practice at all. The wake back to bed technique, sometimes abbreviated WBTB, is often combined with MILD. The sleeper sets an alarm to wake approximately 5 to 6 hours after falling asleep, stays awake for between 15 and 30 minutes in calm, quiet activity, and then returns to sleep while holding the intention to lucid dream. The rationale is that this timing places the sleeper's return to sleep at the beginning of their longest, most intense REM periods. Combined with the intention setting of MILD, the technique has shown in several controlled studies to be one of the more reliable approaches for lucid dream induction. In a study published in the journal Dreaming, researchers found that combining reality testing with WBT, B and MILD produced lucid dreams in more than 17% of attempts among participants with no prior lucid dreaming experience. For reference, untrained participants attempting lucid dreaming without technique reported lucid dreams in fewer than 2% of attempts during the study period. The difference is large enough to suggest that lucid dreaming is a genuinely learnable skill, not simply a fixed trait that some people have and others don't. The neuroscience of why these techniques work is still being investigated. But the leading hypothesis involves something called prospective memory, the ability to remember to do something in the future. When a person sets a strong intention before sleep, they are essentially creating a prospective memory cue. When I find myself in a dream, I will remember that I am dreaming. The prefrontal cortex, which manages prospective memory during waking life, appears to carry some of this function into sleep when the intention is set clearly enough. The boundary between intention and dream becomes permeable. Lucid dreaming has attracted interest from researchers in fields ranging from cognitive neuroscience to clinical psychology. One area of growing interest is the use of lucid dreaming as a therapeutic tool for chronic nightmares. Nightmare disorder, defined as frequent distressing nightmares causing significant distress or impairment, affects an estimated 4 to 10% of adults. Traditional treatments include image rehearsal therapy, where waking sufferers rewrite the narrative of their nightmare while awake. Lucid dreaming therapy takes a different approach, teaching the sufferer to become lucid within the nightmare itself, and then changing the dream from the inside. A meta-analysis reviewing studies on lucid dreaming therapy for nightmares found consistent evidence that the approach reduced nightmare frequency and associated distress. Several trials reported not only fewer nightmares following lucid dreaming training, but also improvements in sleep quality, daytime mood, and overall well-being. Researchers noted that the act of becoming lucid within a nightmare seemed to reduce its emotional power, even when the dreamer did not succeed in changing the dream's content. Awareness alone, without control, appeared to shift the nightmare's impact. Lucid dreaming has also been studied in the context of post-traumatic stress disorder. Recurrent traumatic nightmares are among the most distressing symptoms of PTSD, and standard treatments do not always resolve them fully. Early research into lucid dreaming as a complementary approach has shown some promise, with participants reporting that gaining awareness within traumatic dreams reduced their intensity and the degree of fear they produced. The research is still preliminary, and clinicians emphasize that lucid dreaming should not be attempted as a standalone intervention for PTSD without professional guidance. There is a quieter side to lucid dreaming that the scientific literature touches on less often, but that practitioners describe consistently. When a person realizes they are dreaming, there is often a moment of profound stillness. The dream continues around them, vivid and complete, and they stand within it knowing it is entirely made of mind. Some describe this as the most peaceful feeling they have ever had, a sense of being both utterly alone and utterly safe, inside a world that is entirely their own. Whatever science eventually concludes about lucid dreaming, that quality of stillness seems worth noting. Take a deep breath and feel this. Every dream you have ever had was created by this same brain resting in the dark. Every impossible landscape, every person who spoke to you in a dream, every emotion you felt upon waking, all of it was generated from inside. The dreaming brain is not passive. It is building worlds. Feel the weight of your body where it rests. Feel your breathing, slow and steady, already beginning the work of moving towards sleep. Every cell inside you is working quietly. Heart beating, lungs breathing, brain drifting, all without your effort. You are a complete ecosystem, settling. And now we continue. The sleeping brain during REM is, in many ways, extraordinarily active. Blood flow to many regions of the brain actually increases during REM sleep compared to light sleep. The visual cortex at the back of the brain is highly engaged, generating the imagery of dreams. The limbic system, including the amygdala, which processes emotion, is also intensely active. This is why dreams so often feel emotionally charged. The emotional centers of the brain are running at full speed. Meanwhile, the prefrontal cortex is relatively quiet, which is why that emotional charge rarely triggers the kind of critical questioning that would occur during waking life. The amygdala's elevated activity during REM sleep is one reason why fear is the most commonly reported dream emotion in studies of dream content. Research using large samples of recorded dream reports has found that negative emotions, particularly anxiety and fear, appear more frequently in dreams than in waking life accounts of the same periods. This appears to be functional rather than dysfunctional. Researchers, including Matthew Walker at the University of California, Berkeley, have proposed that REM sleep serves in part as an emotional processing system, allowing the brain to revisit emotional memories in a state where stress hormones are suppressed, reducing their long-term emotional impact. The noradrenaline system, which in waking life is responsible for the stress response and the feeling of alarm, is almost completely suppressed during REM sleep. Noradrenaline levels in the brain drop lower during REM than at any other time in the 24-hour cycle. This suppression is thought to be important for emotional processing, creating a kind of low-threat environment in which emotionally charged memories can be revisited and integrated without the full weight of the stress response they originally carried. It is, in a sense, the brain's own version of a safe space for processing difficult experiences. The connection between REM sleep and emotional memory has been documented across numerous studies. People deprived of REM sleep show increased emotional reactivity the following day. They rate neutral facial expressions as more threatening. They have more difficulty regulating emotional responses to stressors, and they are more likely to form negative associations with ambiguous events. The phrase, "sleep on it," when it comes to emotional decisions, has genuine physiological basis. The brain is not simply resting during sleep. It is working through the emotional residue of the day. Lucid dreaming sits within this emotional processing landscape in interesting ways. When a person becomes lucid during a charged or frightening dream, they gain some access to their prefrontal cortex's regulatory capacities, which are normally offline during dreaming. This prefrontal reactivation may allow the dreamer to modulate the emotional tone of the dream in a way that ordinary dreaming cannot. Some researchers have speculated that this makes practiced lucid dreaming a potential tool not just for nightmare therapy, but for broader emotional regulation. The research is still early, but the theoretical framework is coherent. A notable line of research concerns what happens in the brain when a dreamer signals from inside a lucid dream. In studies conducted at multiple sleep laboratories, including work published in the journal Current Biology, participants trained in lucid dreaming were asked to perform specific cognitive tasks while lucid and dreaming, including simple arithmetic and responding to questions with eye movement signals. The brain activity recorded during these tasks showed patterns consistent with conscious waking processing, including activation of prefrontal and parietal regions, occurring inside a sleeping brain. The dreamer was, in a measurable sense, thinking clearly. In February 2021, a study led by first author Karen Concoli at Northwestern University, working with teams at 3 other laboratories across France, Germany, and the Netherlands, achieved two-way communication with sleeping lucid dreamers in real time. Trained lucid dreamers were given simple questions from researchers while they slept, delivered through spoken word or flashes of light. The dreamers responded with pre-agreed eye movements. Across 29 correctly answered exchanges involving 6 of the 36 participants. The dreamers responded during verified REM sleep. The researchers described what they had witnessed as interactive dreaming, a term for this quiet back and forth between the waking world and the dreaming mind. The responses in that 2021 study were not perfect, which the researchers acknowledged openly. The dreamers sometimes signaled the wrong answer, sometimes failed to respond at all, and sometimes incorporated the researchers' questions into the dream itself, hearing them as voices coming from dream characters or environments. But the rate of correct responses was meaningfully above chance, and the researchers were able to verify through simultaneous brain recording that the correct responses occurred during active REM sleep. The finding opened a genuinely new experimental possibility, using lucid dreamers as research participants who could report on their dream experience from within the dream itself. The body during REM sleep is in a state called REM atonia, a temporary paralysis of voluntary muscles. This prevents the sleeper from physically acting out their dreams. The brainstem sends inhibitory signals that suppress the motor cortex, so that when the dreaming brain generates the experience of running, the legs do not move. REM atonia is complete in most muscles below the face and neck, which is why facial twitches, small sounds, and eye movements remain possible even during full REM paralysis. The body is still, but the mind is in motion. Sleep paralysis is a condition that occurs when REM atonia persists briefly after the sleeper has awakened, or begins slightly before the dreamer has fully entered sleep. The person finds themselves conscious and aware but unable to move their body. This is often accompanied by vivid hypnagogic or hypnopompic hallucinations. Estimates suggest that between 8 and 50% of people experience sleep paralysis at least once in their lifetime, with a smaller percentage experiencing it recurrently. Despite being unsettling when unexpected, sleep paralysis is physiologically harmless. It resolves within seconds to minutes as the REM atonia lifts. There is a documented relationship between sleep paralysis and lucid dreaming. Many people who practice wake-initiated lucid dreaming deliberately pass through sleep paralysis as a gateway into the dream state. By remaining calm during the paralysis and the accompanying hallucinations, the experienced practitioner can allow the dream imagery to solidify and enter a fully formed lucid dream without losing consciousness. This is among the more challenging aspects of WILD practice, requiring a degree of composure toward the often strange sensory experiences of hypnagogia that takes time to develop. Several ancient and indigenous traditions around the world have descriptions of states that correspond closely to what modern science calls lucid dreaming. The Tibetan Buddhist practice of dream yoga, documented as far back as the 8th century, involves deliberate cultivation of awareness during sleep as a form of spiritual practice. The practitioner aims not merely to control the dream, but to recognize the dream as a reflection of the mind's construction of all experience, waking included. The practice proceeds through stages of progressively clearer and more stable dream awareness, guided by specific contemplative techniques that have been passed down through generations of practitioners. Aristotle wrote about lucid dreaming in the 4th century before the Common Era, observing that often when one is asleep, there is something in consciousness which declares that what then presents itself is but a dream. He was describing the felt quality of dream recognition long before there was any scientific framework for understanding it. For more than 2,000 years, human beings wrote about the experience of waking inside their dreams without having any tools to measure or verify it. The eye movement signal recorded at Hull University was the moment that ancient observation became scientific fact. Personality traits have been studied in relation to lucid dreaming frequency. Research has found moderate correlations between lucid dreaming and several psychological characteristics, including openness to experience, one of the 5 major personality dimensions, which reflects curiosity, imagination, and receptivity to new ideas. People who score high on openness tend to report lucid dreaming more frequently. Other correlated traits include mindfulness, the tendency to notice and pay attention to present moment experience, and absorption, a tendency to become deeply immersed in mental imagery and imaginative activities. Lucid dreaming appears to draw on a cluster of attentional and imaginative capacities. Whether lucid dreaming can be learned regardless of personality type is a question with a practically important answer. The research so far suggests yes, at least to some degree. Controlled training studies have produced meaningful increases in lucid dreaming frequency among participants with no prior experience and no particular predisposition toward it. The techniques appear to work across a range of people. The degree of improvement varies, and some individuals respond more readily than others. But the skill of lucid dreaming does not appear to be fixed or inherited in the way that eye color or height is. It grows with practice. You're still here, still drifting gently with us through these corridors of sleep science. Take a slow breath. Notice how the room around you has grown quieter, or how the quiet has simply become more noticeable. We're exploring the dreaming mind together. Every one of us listening in our own separate darkness. There's no destination tonight. No test at the end. Just the gentle movement of curiosity carrying us forward. Let's continue. The brain's visual system during dreaming is worth a moment of slow attention. When you dream of seeing something, your visual cortex activates in patterns that closely resemble the patterns produced by actually seeing that thing in waking life. The neural difference between dreamed vision and real vision is smaller than most people expect. This is part of why dreams feel so convincingly real while they are happening. The brain is not imagining with a pale imitation of the visual system. It is using the visual system itself, running it as if the eyes were open and the world outside were producing the input. The same principle appears to apply to other sensory experiences in dreams. Dreamed sounds activate auditory cortex. Dreamed touch activates somatosensory regions. Dreams of movement engage the motor cortex, even as the body remains still. The dreaming brain is, in a very literal neural sense, experiencing what it depicts. Some researchers have proposed that this is one reason skilled performers, athletes among them, report using lucid dreaming as a form of mental practice. If dreamed movement activates the motor cortex in patterns similar to real movement, then practicing a skill in a lucid dream may offer something more than pure imagination. Research into motor learning during sleep has found that the sleeping brain consolidates physical skills learned during the day. Musicians who practice a passage and then sleep show improved performance the next morning compared to those who practice and stay awake for an equal period. This consolidation is thought to occur primarily during REM and slow-wave sleep, as the brain replays motor sequences and strengthens the neural pathways that encode them. Whether deliberate practice within a lucid dream adds to this consolidation is not yet established, but it is an active area of inquiry. Dream content, when systematically recorded and analyzed, shows some consistent patterns across cultures and individuals. The most common dream themes include being chased, falling, flying, arriving unprepared for an exam or performance, losing teeth, and being unable to move or speak. Some of these themes are so widespread that researchers have speculated they may reflect evolutionarily ancient concerns, preserved in the dream system because the scenarios they simulate, pursuit by a predator, falling from a height, social failure, remain relevant to survival and social life. The specifics change with culture. The underlying emotional scenarios remain recognizable. Flying dreams are of particular interest in the context of lucid dreaming because they are disproportionately common in lucid dreams compared to ordinary ones. Many people report that flying is among the first things they attempt when they realize they are dreaming, and that the experience of flight in a lucid dream carries a particular quality of freedom and weightlessness that is difficult to describe but easy to remember. Some researchers have noted that the felt sensation of flight in a lucid dream activates vestibular and proprioceptive cortex regions in patterns that are not easily produced during ordinary waking. The brain generates the feeling of movement through space with genuine physical verisimilitude. Dream characters, the other people who appear in dreams, are one of the most studied and least understood aspects of dream phenomenology. They behave with apparent autonomy, say unexpected things, and sometimes seem to know things the dreamer is not consciously thinking about. In lucid dreams, some practitioners report being able to interact with dream characters deliberately, asking them questions and receiving answers that feel novel. Whether these responses represent access to unconscious knowledge, creative generation by the dreaming brain, or something else entirely, remains an open question. The experience, for those who report it, is often described as deeply compelling. The relationship between lucid dreaming and creativity has been explored in several studies. Anecdotal accounts of creative breakthroughs occurring during or immediately following vivid dreams are common in artistic and scientific communities. More systematically, researchers have found that people in lucid dreams can produce original poetry, musical compositions, and visual art that they consider of higher quality than their usual waking work, or different from it in tone and character. The loosened constraints of dreaming may create space for associations that waking logic sometimes suppresses. The default mode network, a set of brain regions that activates during wakeful rest, mind wandering, and self-referential thinking, shows interesting patterns during lucid dreaming. In ordinary dreaming, the default mode network is active, consistent with the self-referential and narrative quality of most dream content. In lucid dreaming, some researchers have found that this activity shifts in a way that resembles the shift seen in experienced meditators during focused awareness practices. The lucid dreamer and the meditating practitioner appear to share something at the level of brain organization, a quality of meta-awareness that restructures the default network's activity. Mindfulness meditation and lucid dreaming have been studied as related practices. Multiple studies have found higher rates of spontaneous lucid dreaming among people with regular meditation practices, and several researchers have proposed that the attentional skills developed in meditation, particularly the ability to notice mental processes without being entirely absorbed by them, are the same capacities that support lucid dreaming. In both cases, the practitioner learns to be aware of what the mind is doing rather than simply being swept along by its content. The meditator learns to watch thoughts. The lucid dreamer learns to watch dreams. Halfway through this quiet journey, we have moved from the first laboratory signal of a dreaming eye to the overlap between meditation, motor learning, emotional therapy, and the neuroscience of self-awareness. The picture that is forming is not of a strange quirk of sleep, but of something more fundamental. Lucid dreaming appears to be a natural capacity of the human mind that sits at the meeting point of consciousness, memory, emotion, and self-reflection. Whatever it means for a brain to know itself, dreaming offers one version of the answer. And that answer is gentler, stranger, and more intimate than most people realize. Let each breath guide you deeper now. Time is softer here than it is in the day. The facts you've heard are already beginning to blend with the quiet, already settling into something less like information and more like a feeling, a sense of how vast and patient the sleeping mind is, how much it does while the body rests. And we continue. There are pharmacological substances that appear to increase lucid dreaming frequency, and researchers have studied several of them with some care. Acetylcholine is a neurotransmitter strongly associated with REM sleep, and substances that increase acetylcholine activity in the brain appear to intensify and prolong REM periods. Galantamine, a compound approved for Alzheimer's treatment because of its acetylcholine-enhancing properties, has been studied in controlled trials for lucid dreaming induction. In a double-blind study with 121 participants published in 2018, the percentage reporting a lucid dream rose from 14% on placebo to 42% with the higher dose. When combined with a wake back-to-bed interruption and MILD technique, the relationship between dreams and creativity has been a subject of scientific curiosity for many decades. Problem-solving during sleep, in which an unsolved problem presented before sleep shows higher solution rates following a night's rest compared to equal waking periods, has been documented across multiple studies. The sleeping brain appears to make connections between disparate pieces of information that the focused, task-oriented waking brain sometimes misses. This effect appears strongest following REM-rich sleep, which is consistent with REM sleep's role in associative processing. Rest, it turns out, is a form of thinking. Several non-pharmacological technologies have been developed to assist with lucid dream induction. Light-based devices, designed to be worn during sleep, detect REM sleep and then emit subtle cues, typically flashing lights or gentle sounds, that the sleeper can recognize as signals within the dream without fully waking. The idea is that these cues will appear in the dream itself, and that a trained practitioner will recognize the signal and use it as a trigger for lucidity. The effectiveness of these devices in controlled studies has been modest, with some showing benefits and others not, and researchers continue to refine the approach. Transcranial, alternating current stimulation, a technique that passes a small oscillating electrical current through specific regions of the brain via electrodes placed on the scalp, has been explored as a possible tool for lucid dream induction. Early studies applying gamma-frequency stimulation to the frontal cortex during sleep found increases in reports of dream awareness and self-reflection upon waking. The research is still preliminary and requires further replication, but it adds to the broader picture of evidence that prefrontal gamma activity is genuinely implicated in lucid dreaming, and that modulating that activity during sleep may influence the likelihood of lucid episodes. The question of what dreams actually are, what function they serve, remains one of the genuinely open questions in neuroscience. The leading current frameworks include the activation synthesis hypothesis, which holds that dreams are the brain's attempt to make narrative sense of random neural activity during sleep. The threat simulation theory, which proposes that dreaming evolved as a kind of rehearsal system for practicing responses to threatening situations. The memory consolidation view, which emphasizes the role of sleep and dreaming in processing and integrating the day's experiences. And the default mode network account, which sees dreaming as a form of simulated social and self-referential processing. Each captures something true. None captures everything. Some researchers have proposed that dreams serve no function at all, that they are simply a byproduct of the neural activity that does serve functions during sleep, like the sound a machine makes while it is doing its real work. This view has not found much support in the research community, partly because the content of dreams is not random in the way one would expect from pure byproduct. Dream content is shaped by waking concerns, emotional preoccupations, and recent experiences in ways that seem too structured to be meaningless noise. The dreaming brain appears to be selecting what to work on, not simply generating content at random. The continuity hypothesis of dreaming proposes that dream content reflects waking life concerns in a fairly direct way. What you think about during the day tends to appear in your dreams at night. Worries recur. Relationships are processed. Goals and fears surface in the symbolic or literal imagery of the dream. Research using systematic dream diary analysis across large samples has found consistent support for this hypothesis. People going through significant life transitions, divorce, bereavement, career changes, show those transitions reflected in the content of their recorded dreams with notable regularity. Children dream differently from adults. Young children, before the age of 7 or 8, tend to have less emotionally complex dreams, with more static imagery and fewer self-referential narratives. The presence of the self as an active participant in the dream increases with age, and appears to correlate with the development of self-concept more broadly. Nightmares become more common between the ages of 3 and 6, peaking in early childhood before gradually decreasing through adulthood. Lucid dreaming, when it occurs in children, tends to appear spontaneously rather than through deliberate practice. And young children often describe it with matter-of-fact calm, as if it seems like the most natural thing. Animals show clear signs of REM sleep. Virtually all mammals and many birds have been found to exhibit the brain patterns and muscle behavior associated with REM, including the muscle twitching and eye movements that suggest active dreaming. Studies of rats conducted by Matthew Wilson and Kenway Louie at MIT found that sleeping rats replayed the neural firing patterns of mazes they had run earlier in the day, in real time and compressed form. During REM sleep, the rats appeared to be dreaming about the maze. Whether they were aware of doing so is a question that cannot currently be answered. The question of whether animals can have lucid dreams is unanswerable with current methods. But it raises an interesting philosophical point. Lucid dreaming requires a degree of metacognition, awareness of one's own mental states, that is typically considered a feature of higher-order consciousness. The evidence that some animals, great apes and possibly cetaceans among them, have forms of self-awareness suggests they may have the substrate for such awareness during sleep, but without the ability to signal from within a dream, as human lucid dreamers can. The question must remain open. Across cultures and throughout history, dreams have been understood as communications, prophecies, visitations, or journeys to other worlds. Ancient Egyptians considered certain temples to be places of dream incubation, where priests and seekers would sleep in order to receive guidance. Ancient Greeks had a practice called enkoemesis, sleeping in sacred spaces to receive healing or oracular dreams. The Bible contains numerous dreams with narrative weight, from Joseph's dreams of sheaves and stars to the dreams of the Pharaoh that Joseph interpreted. The cross-cultural persistence of dream significance suggests that the felt importance of dreams is not a culturally imposed meaning, but something that arises from the experience itself. Modern psychology's relationship with dreams began with Sigmund Freud, whose work proposed that dreams were the royal road to the unconscious, disguised expressions of repressed wishes. While Freud's specific framework has been largely superseded by neuroscience, his core insight, that dreams are not random or meaningless, but organized by psychological forces not fully accessible to waking attention, has found more support in modern research than is sometimes acknowledged. The dreaming brain is not simply generating noise. It is processing something, even if that something is not, as Freud believed, primarily wish fulfillment. Carl Jung, who worked closely with Freud before developing his own psychology, proposed that dreams drew on a deeper layer of material than personal unconscious content. He introduced the concept of the collective unconscious, a shared layer of symbolic imagery and archetypal themes present in dreams across cultures. Whether one accepts Jung's framework or not, the observation that drove it, that certain symbols, characters, and narrative structures appear in dreams across vastly different cultures and periods, has been noted by researchers studying dream content globally. The recurring figure of the shadow, the wise elder, the journey through darkness, appears in dreams from many different corners of the world. Dream incorporation is the phenomenon by which external sensory information enters and becomes part of an ongoing dream. Studies have found that sounds, smells, and tactile sensations occurring during sleep are incorporated into dream content at rates of between 8 and 30%, depending on the stimulus intensity and the depth of sleep. A phone ringing becomes a fire alarm in the dream. Rain on a window becomes an ocean. The sleeping brain does not simply block external input. It absorbs it, transforms it, and weaves it into the narrative already in progress. This incorporation extends to the body's own physical states. A full bladder often produces dreams of searching for a bathroom. Hunger sometimes generates dreams of food. Cold temperatures have been associated with dreams of snow and ice. Physical discomfort, a limb pressed awkwardly against the mattress, can generate dreams in which the dreamer is trapped or physically constrained. The dreaming brain is in continuous conversation with the body it belongs to. And that conversation shapes the dream's content in ways the dreamer rarely notices until they wake up and feel the root cause directly. The question of whether people can learn new material during sleep has a complicated scientific history. Early popular claims that sleep learning was possible through playing recordings of vocabulary or language lessons during sleep were largely not supported by controlled studies. However, more recent research has distinguished between general sleep learning, which remains limited, and a narrower phenomenon in which targeted memory reactivation during sleep, by presenting cues associated with specific memories, while the sleeper is in slow-wave sleep, can selectively strengthen those memories. The sleeping brain is not a blank slate, but it does appear to be selectively consolidating what the waking brain has already deposited. The phenomenon of false awakening is closely related to lucid dreaming and is often described by practitioners of both WILD and MILD techniques. A false awakening occurs when a dreamer believes they have woken up, begins going about their morning routine, and then realizes, sometimes through a reality check, that they are still in a dream. Multiple layers of false awakening are sometimes reported, in which the dreamer wakes, performs a reality check that appears to confirm they are awake, and then later realizes that check itself was part of the dream. The dreaming brain is capable of simulating the experience of waking with considerable fidelity. The nested quality of false awakenings has been used as a metaphor by philosophers examining the nature of consciousness more broadly. If the brain can generate an experience of being awake that is phenomenologically indistinguishable from actual waking, at least for a short time, then the ordinary assumption that waking experience directly represents reality becomes somewhat more complicated. René Descartes used almost exactly this reasoning in his Meditations, asking how one could be certain at any moment that one was not dreaming. Modern neuroscience does not resolve this question philosophically, but it has added empirical texture to it. Some people report experiencing what they describe as shared dreams, in which two people who slept separately report dreams with overlapping content. These accounts are difficult to study systematically, since dream memories are fragile and subject to distortion, and it is essentially impossible to rule out confirmation bias in retrospective comparisons. No controlled study has demonstrated shared dreaming under conditions that exclude ordinary explanations. Researchers approach these accounts with interest but considerable methodological caution. The frequency and consistency with which people report such experiences across cultures, however, keeps the question alive at the edges of dream science. Waking life events that are emotionally salient, particularly those involving strong negative or positive emotion, are more likely to appear in subsequent dreams than emotionally neutral events. This is consistent with the emotional processing account of dreaming. The brain prioritizes, for overnight processing, the material that carries the most emotional weight. Studies examining dream content in the days and weeks following stressful events, including natural disasters, bereavement, and major life transitions, consistently find elevated rates of dreams related to those events. Over time, if sleep is proceeding normally, the emotional intensity of those event-related dreams typically decreases, suggesting that the processing has been doing its work. The phrase "dream of this" is sometimes offered as a kind of gift, an invitation to let the mind continue working on something during the night that it could not finish during the day. There is now enough research to suggest the phrase has physiological basis. The sleeping brain appears to make connections between disparate pieces of information that the focused, task-oriented waking brain sometimes misses. The effect is strongest following REM sleep, which is consistent with REM's role in associative and emotional processing. Rest is a form of thinking, and sometimes the thinking that matters most happens when we are least aware of it. Lucid dreaming has been studied in children with recurrent nightmares with interesting preliminary results. Programs teaching children simple versions of reality testing and dream rehearsal, adapted for age and cognitive development, have shown reductions in nightmare frequency and improvements in sleep quality in small controlled trials. Children appear to take to the practices with some ease, possibly because their relationship to the boundary between imagination and reality is itself more fluid than in adults. The idea of noticing you are in a dream and changing it can feel less strange to a child than to an adult who has spent decades treating the two as entirely separate. The role of working memory in lucid dreaming has been examined in several studies. Working memory, the capacity to hold and manipulate information in the mind over short periods, appears to contribute to the stability of lucid awareness within a dream. Dreamers with higher working memory capacity report longer and more stable lucid dreams. Attempts to stabilize a lucid dream by engaging with it deliberately through actions like touching surfaces, spinning, or rubbing the hands together are thought to work in part by engaging working memory and thus supporting the continued activity of prefrontal regions. The techniques for sustaining lucidity are, at a neural level, techniques for holding the prefrontal cortex gently online. Some researchers have observed that the most practiced lucid dreamers show an unusual pattern of brain activity during both REM sleep and waking. Their baseline levels of prefrontal gamma activity during REM are higher than those of non-practitioners, and their resting waking brain recordings show patterns associated with attentiveness and metacognitive monitoring. Whether this represents a trait that leads people towards successful lucid dreaming practice or a change produced by the practice itself has not been fully resolved. The tentative suggestion from current research is that both may be true. The skill develops in a brain that already leans toward attentiveness, and practice may deepen that lean. We are 3/4 of the way through our journey through dreaming. The picture that science has assembled, still incomplete, still full of genuinely open questions, is one in which the dreaming brain is neither asleep in the ordinary sense nor awake in the ordinary sense, but doing something that each of those words only partially describes. It is consolidating memory while weaving narrative. It is processing emotion while generating vivid, multi-sensory worlds from nothing. And sometimes, in the quietest and most curious of its moments, it looks up from its work and notices what it is doing. That noticing is lucid dreaming, and it may be one of the most human things a brain can do. Almost there now. Let your breath settle deeper. Notice how heavy the idea of effort feels from this distance. You have heard so much tonight, and none of it needs to be held. Let it settle where it will. You are part of all of this. And the softest, most ancient thing this brain knows how to do is coming now. We'll continue with the final facts. The feeling of waking from a vivid dream and lying still in the dark, holding the images before they dissolve. is something most people know. Dream memories are brief and fragile, like frost on a window. They are there, and then they are not. Researchers believe this rapid fading occurs because the neurochemical conditions that support memory consolidation, particularly noradrenaline and serotonin, are suppressed during REM sleep. The brain runs its imagery system fully. The conditions for encoding that imagery into lasting memory are not present. This is why the first moments after waking are so important for anyone who wishes to remember their dreams. The window is narrow, reaching for the journal immediately, before the phone, before the day's concerns, before rising from bed, captures something that will otherwise be gone. Experienced dream journalists describe learning to move very carefully into waking, keeping the body still, letting the images present themselves. The dream, approached gently, gives more than the dream approached urgently. The quality of dream imagery changes across the night. Early night dreams tend to be shorter, more fragmented, and more closely tied to the day's events. Late night dreams tend to be longer, more complex, more emotionally layered, and more imaginative. This progression reflects the changing ratio of slow-wave sleep to REM sleep across the night. Early sleep does the heavy work of physical restoration. As the night progresses, REM sleep expands, and the dreaming mind has longer, quieter stretches in which to roam. Recurring dreams are among the most commonly reported dream phenomena. Studies indicate that between 60 and 70% of adults report having had recurring dreams at some point in their lives. The content of recurring dreams tends to be negative in emotional tone, centered around themes of threat, pursuit, failure, or loss. Researchers propose that recurring dreams reflect unresolved concerns that the dreaming brain returns to repeatedly. Some accounts of lucid dreaming therapy suggest that becoming lucid within a recurring dream and engaging with it differently can reduce or resolve the recurrence over time. There is a particular quality of peace that experienced lucid dreamers describe in the moments after recognizing they are dreaming, before they have decided what to do next. The dream is still around them, fully formed and vivid, but the pressure of its narrative has lifted. They are in it, but not entirely of it. Some describe lying down in the middle of the dream landscape and simply watching it, the way one might watch clouds from a hillside. The dream holds, patient and complete, waiting. There is no rush. Dreams about teeth, particularly about losing teeth, are reported across cultures with notable frequency. Studies collecting dream reports from diverse populations across multiple continents have found teeth dreams to be among the most commonly shared cross-cultural dream themes. One analysis, examining teeth dreams alongside anxiety measures, found that teeth dreams were more common among people experiencing elevated waking anxiety. Whether they reflect specific concerns about appearance or represent a broader somatic anxiety response, they appear to arise from something the dreaming brain returns to with some regularity. The science of lucid dreaming continues to develop. Functional MRI studies of lucid dreamers have confirmed and extended earlier findings, showing not only prefrontal gamma activation, but also increased functional connectivity between the prefrontal cortex and other regions, including the parietal cortex, which is associated with self-other distinction and spatial processing, and the anterior cingulate cortex. which is involved in monitoring for discrepancies between expectation and reality. The lucid dreaming brain is, in a sense, gently cross-checking itself. There are documented individual differences in the experience of lucid dreaming beyond frequency. Some lucid dreamers report vivid color. Others report muted or grayscale dreams even during lucid episodes. Some experience full multisensory richness, temperature, texture, taste, smell within the dream. Others report primarily visual and auditory content. The variability suggests that lucid dreaming is not a single standardized experience, but one that takes different forms depending on the individual's neurological signature, their attentional style, and perhaps simply the conditions of a given night. Time perception in lucid dreams has been examined in several controlled studies. Researchers asked lucid dreamers to count to 10 or to 30 within their dream, signaling the start and end with eye movements. The findings suggest that dream time, at least in these controlled intervals, moves at approximately the same rate as waking time. The felt sense of time moving differently in dreams may arise from the absence of external time anchors, clocks, light changes, hunger, rather than from any actual distortion of the temporal processing system. Inside a dream, time simply has less furniture to lean against. The neuroscience of self-awareness has found an unexpected ally in lucid dreaming research. The conditions that produce lucid dreaming: increased prefrontal gamma activity, enhanced connectivity between frontoparietal networks, elevated metacognitive monitoring, are conditions that have also been associated with heightened self-awareness in waking life. Studying the transitions into and out of lucid dreaming may illuminate the neural basis of self-awareness itself, one of the deepest questions in cognitive science. The dreaming mind, so long regarded as a curiosity at the edges of consciousness research, may be one of its most informative windows. There is something gentle in the knowledge that the brain, every single night without exception, constructs an entire world, without asking, without effort, without any conscious instruction from the person it belongs to. It assembles characters and landscapes, and weather and light. It generates conversations that surprise the dreamer. It produces problems and explores them in ways the waking mind never would. And it does all of this in darkness, in silence, while the body it calls home lies still. People who have been blind from birth also dream, though the sensory content of their dreams differs from those of sighted people. Congenitally blind individuals report dreams rich in tactile, auditory, and other non-visual content, with little or no visual imagery. Those who lost their sight later in life often continue to have visual dreams for years or decades. A reminder that the brain's dream system works with the sensory vocabulary available to it, reconstructing experience from whatever materials it has. There is a form of dream awareness that falls between ordinary dreaming and full lucid dreaming, sometimes called semi-lucid or pre-lucid dreaming. It involves a partial recognition, a sense of strangeness or unreality within the dream, without the complete awareness that one is dreaming. The dreamer might think, "This is strange," without the full recognition of, "I am dreaming." This partial state is common in people beginning lucid dreaming practice, and is often described as a step in the direction of full lucidity. the prefrontal cortex stirring toward activity but not yet fully arriving. The experience of waking from a deeply meaningful dream and feeling its residue throughout the following day is something many people recognize. Certain dreams leave a quality behind, a shift in mood, a sense of something processed. Researchers studying dream effect, the emotional tone of dreams and their carryover into waking life, have found that positive dreams are associated with improved mood and greater cognitive flexibility the following day. The night's dreaming is not sealed off from the day that follows. The two are in continuous, quiet conversation. The practice of lucid dreaming, when it is working well, tends to produce a subtle but noticeable effect on waking life. Practitioners frequently report increased awareness of their mental states during the day, a tendency to notice more, to catch themselves in automatic reactions, to pause before being entirely swept away. Whether this is a direct effect of the prefrontal training that lucid dreaming involves, or simply a feature of the kind of person drawn to the practice, is hard to disentangle. But the overlap with the effects of mindfulness meditation practice is consistent enough to suggest a genuine connection between attentiveness in sleep and attentiveness in waking. Scientists have noted that lucid dreaming shares phenomenological features with certain meditative states and specific hypnotic experiences. In each of these conditions, ordinary cognitive constraints loosen. The boundary between self and world becomes more fluid. Vivid, autonomous imagery appears. The sense of being a fixed observer of experience shifts. Some researchers have proposed that these diverse states share underlying neural mechanisms, perhaps involving changes in default mode, network activity, and prefrontal connectivity, and that studying them together may illuminate something more general about the plasticity of human consciousness. Certain sleep disorders affect dreaming in ways that parallel and contrast with lucid dreaming. Narcolepsy, a neurological disorder affecting the sleep-wake regulation system, is associated with dramatically increased frequency of both vivid dreaming and lucid dreaming, as well as hypnagogic hallucinations and sleep paralysis. People with narcolepsy often move directly from waking into REM sleep without passing through the normal sequence of sleep stages, which may explain both the vividness of their dream experiences and the higher rates of lucidity. The condition that disrupts ordinary sleeping also, inadvertently, creates conditions that support the most unusual forms of dreaming. Some experienced lucid dreamers describe practices within the dream itself to prevent it from dissolving. When a lucid dream begins to destabilize, which often happens when the dreamer becomes too emotionally activated and the balance maintaining the dream state is disrupted. Practitioners report that actions like spinning in place, rubbing the hands together, or quietly calling out for clarity often prolong the dream. The consistent reporting of these practices across independent practitioners suggests they may reflect something real about the attentional mechanisms supporting dream stability. The first minutes after waking from a lucid dream are often described as different from waking from an ordinary dream. There is frequently a quality of clarity, a residual alertness that persists for some time. Whether this reflects the unusual prefrontal activation of the lucid episode lingering into waking consciousness, or simply the psychological weight of having done something that feels meaningful, is not established. What is consistent is the description. Waking from a lucid dream often feels like returning from somewhere. The dreamer has been somewhere. Now they are back, The very last fact of this long, quiet journey is also the simplest. Every night, without fail, the sleeping brain generates experience. In the deepest, darkest, most private hours of the night, when the world outside is silent and the body is still, something in the mind keeps going. It builds and processes and imagines and feels. It connects the day to the night, to the day again. And sometimes, in those brief and luminous moments when awareness surfaces within the dream, the mind glimpses itself in the act of creation. That glimpse is what lucid dreaming is. And it has been there, available, every night of every life, waiting quietly for anyone who thinks to look. And so, our quiet journey through the science of lucid dreaming comes to a gentle close. We began with a laboratory signal sent by a dreaming eye in April of 1975, and discovered that the sleeping brain is not a passive theater, but an active architect. From the prefrontal gamma waves that stir awake inside a dream, to the 29 quietly answered questions sent from dreamers back to waking researchers through the curtain of sleep, we glimpsed how complex, how capable, how quietly astonishing the dreaming mind turns out to be. Lucid dreaming reminds us that awareness is not fixed or singular. It exists in gradations, in half-wakings and full recognitions, in the flickering edge between knowing and not knowing where we are. Much of the most important thinking we ever do happens in the dark, without witness, without memory we can hold. Yet it shapes us. It softens what is sharp. It carries us forward into mornings that feel, without our knowing exactly why, a little clearer than they might have. By pausing to notice, even for these 100 quiet facts, we glimpse how extraordinary an ordinary night of sleep truly is. In these final minutes, take the deepest breath you can, as deep as possible. Think about unity, about every mind dreaming tonight, each one inside its own private world, each one made of the same material, neurons and memories and quiet electrical fire. Think about consciousness itself, yours, mine, everyone listening, all awareness, everywhere, perhaps all connected in ways we don't yet understand. You are not alone in the universe of minds. Let your entire being dissolve into the ocean of consciousness, into dreamless rest, into the space before thought. Prepare for deep sleep. No boundaries left, only peace. If this gentle journey through the sleeping mind helped you relax or drift towards sleep tonight, a quiet like or subscribe could help another restless mind discover this space too. It might be exactly what they need on a night when sleep feels far away. One soft tap, one sleepy soul at a time. But there is nothing to do now. Nothing at all. You have traveled inward tonight, through corridors most people never pause to notice. You touched the architecture of how the sleeping brain knows itself, and found it more fluid, more gentle, more endlessly patient than it seemed from the outside. You can allow these thoughts of dreaming to fade now, like the last image of a dream at dawn. Present, then softer, then simply part of everything, leaving only the quiet, unheld calm behind. Let your breathing deepen. Let your body feel heavier, as if all the attention you've been holding is being gently set down by invisible hands, and is simply settling. If sleep comes, let it carry you the way dream onset does. Not with force, not with effort, but with quiet intention. Into a realm where time and weight no longer matter. If your eyes are still open, the next video is waiting for you, ready to continue the journey. But if they're closed, stay there. Stay in the darkness that feels safe and warm. Tomorrow, your dreaming mind will still be there. Still tending, still weaving, still becoming. But tonight belongs to stillness. Rest well, gentle explorer. And remember, your mind is always building something beautiful in the dark. Good night.